Most people have default setting habits that are destroying their future versus driving their future, where they cast out, here's who I was born to be, and then build habits that you rely on the habits, because your habits don't care about your feelings. You do the right things, even though you don't feel like going to the gym, but you still do it. I don't feel like eating healthy, you still do it. Why do you do all those things? Because it's become a habit.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Overstock Dixie. You can go like and follow their Instagram. There's new items that pop up on there every day, multiple times a day. Anything from furniture to tools, electronics, pretty much anything you're looking for. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick podcast. We've got a very special guest in today, someone I'd love to call a friend. It makes me sit up a little straighter every time I talk about him. I've been referencing him a lot more, so if you've paid attention to us, you'll definitely know the name. Today we've got Justin Prince in on the podcast. How's it going, man?
Brother, thanks for having me, dude. I'm honored to be back. I'm returning.
Yeah,
returning starter, dude. So I'm excited to be back.
No, you blew my socks off last time. I'll be honest.
Appreciate that.
I knew some of the background a little bit, and then I kind of stalked you on social media before you came on last time, but I had no idea I was bringing on a rock star to my little humble podcast. So
yeah, I don't know about that, bro. Go ask my kids how much of a rock star I am. We'll probably figure it out there,
But seriously, thanks for taking some time out. I know you're super busy. There's not a lot of people like this, at least that I conversate with somewhat normally, but I'm like slightly intimidated when I get around you, dude. And I'm not trying to float your boat, but I love it, dude, because I feel like we can sit down and still have a great conversation. So I've got some stuff prepared. First things first, we're really going to pound the book. Yeah. So Justin's I'll let you kind of talk about it, maybe backstory it a little bit and why you did it, and I'll just let you take over. Yeah,
so I wrote a book called Be the One. And there's two kind of main reasons for me. The first one is, you'll notice the book's not called Become the One, it's Be the One, which means you already are the one. So I believe success is an identity process, and you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. So for example, if you see yourself as a loser, you're not going to show up and play like a winner. And if you see yourself as a winner, you won't roll over and quit like a loser would. James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits, and he says there's two boys, one of them stole the candy. And they said to the first child, "Did you steal the candy?" The little boy said, "I didn't steal the candy." And they said to the other child, "Did you steal the candy?" He says, "I don't steal." So I didn't steal that particular piece of candy as an action. I don't steal as an identity. And over time, you'll be consistent with your identity. And so when you realize that you're the one, if you take, Derick, your parents, right, your mom and dad, and you take your grandparents, you take your great-grandparents, so the last 12 generations. For the last 12 generations, it's approximately 400 years for each of us. And it was 4,094 people from all over the world that came together to create you.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're the one. You're the one they lived for, bled for, died for, triumphs, strengths, struggles, wins, losses, tears, joys, pain, and sacrifice for you to have this moment. You are the one. And all of us listening, you're the one. And the second part of the book is be. Be is a present term, right? It's a present word. And so for me, as I look back at my life, I came from a broken home at age 12. We moved 13 times in the 7 years through the teenage years. I have really no professional background making pizzas, doing construction work. I worked at a mall kiosk selling Bible videos. I have no college education. I had a 2.1 GPA in high school. I just life started coming at me fast. What I did have was big dreams and big goals. My first business failed. It's below zero financially. We were talking about some of this, before we started, but just, you're really grinding. You're really wondering, can I make this thing happen? Do I have what it really takes to pull this off? And at one point, with my pregnant wife and our two kids in the loft of my wife's parents' garage, I have two babies sleeping in the closet. I'm a grown man. I live in the United States of America. I have two part-time jobs, and I'm chasing the dream to be free as an entrepreneur, and I'm trying to make it happen. And now I've gone on to build like 5 different multi-million-dollar businesses. I've done $2.5 billion in revenue. I've built a business that's paid out over $1 billion in commissions to folks that are talking about our products. And I look at this, I'm like, what the heck just happened? How did that all happen? And so I wanted to put a book, I put it all into a book of the practical, tactical steps to be the one today. In other words, what would you do if you were to be that one? Not trying to become it, just be it. You already are the one. And so I was on a podcast the other day, and the woman says to me, she goes, "Justin, I've read literally hundreds of motivational, inspirational, personal development books. She goes, I've never read a book like this. She goes, this is like a practical, tactical roadmap of exactly what to do to be that one today. So do I hope that the book motivates people? Yes. Do I hope it inspires people? Yes. Inspire means the word comes from the root, which means to breathe life into. So yeah, I hope it breathes life into people's dreams and their goals. But what I also hope it does is it's a roadmap to create, to design, and to live an unforgettable life. And so I want people to leave there being like, man, I know what to do to go be the one today.
So what I'm kind of hearing from this is really for anyone. This is for anyone, whether, I mean, could it be entrepreneur? Could it be 9 to 5? Could it be
both.
Grandma?
Yes.
High school kid?
Yeah. So check this out. So I just started here in our local community, what I'm calling the Decades in Today's Teenage Mastermind. So I'm going to get kids from approximately 14 to 18, these kind of teenager kids. And we did our first one just the other night. It was really cool. These kids
I saw your story on this, dude. I was like, this is awesome.
It was awesome. Kids, no phones. No one's on their phones. They all had notebooks. They're all taking notes. We have a group chat where their biggest takeaways and so on. And we right now have the highest suicide rates we've ever had in the history of our country, and really in the history of the world, specifically with young men. We have the highest anxiety rates we've ever had, the highest depression rates we've ever had. People are going through a lot. There's a lot going on for a lot of people. And once you realize that you're the one, that your life has value and purpose and meaning, you're not here by accident. The word decision, I like words because I think they're interesting to hear the roots. So the word decision comes from the Latin. Decision meant to cut, and the D meant off. So when they created the word incision, it cut in, and then a decision cut off. So think of it this way. You come up to a point of your life, right? You choose to go right. You make a decision to go right. What you did is you cut off all other possibilities of left. You made a decision, right? So I want to help if you're listening to this, every decision you've ever made your whole life, every decision you've ever made your whole life has put you on this podcast right now listening to these words, every one. And you've never been this old before, and you'll never be this young again. And you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next. You can make the decision to be the one in your life. So as I look at these kids, and again, we're talking now about teenagers, right? Well, what if you're 57 years old or 83 years old, and you're like, yo, I'm going to make the decision to be the one in my life to where future generations look up into that family lineage and they say it was her or it was him. He's the one. You can make the decision today to be the one that ends the abuse in the family. The family line, it just stops with, you say it was my great-great-grandpa, it ended with him. Or the addiction, it was my great-great-great-grandma, the addiction stopped with our family. Or maybe you say, it was my great-great-grandma or grandpa, they're the ones that taught us the financial principles. They're the ones that like set our family in motion. And guess how many people it takes to make that decision?
One.
It takes one. It takes you. It takes the person to be that one today. And that's a message that every single person around the world needs to hear. That's the reason I think the book will be a book that will affect millions of people's lives once they recognize I'm the one and they recognize how to be the one today.
Yeah. So my son was born about 3 years ago. He's almost 3. And for me, that was like a mind shift for me when he was born, right? I was like, holy crap, like this is the future now. Like and he's a son. And so I'm like, he's going to carry on, my lineage of my name. And he's we share a middle name. And so I kind of like, it was funny. I was like, am I putting too much pressure on this kid by giving him my middle name? That's kind of, I had this thought process of that. And I'm like, well, he's probably going to have a lot of pressure just filling shoes anyway. So let's give him some direction now. So that was kind of my goal with him was, okay, I get to mold this future, teach him, show him, and let him go do it. But man, when I've heard you talk about be the one and you talk about past generations, never thought about it.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way. And I started pinpointing in my past generations, living or non-living, like what they did, right? Like like my mom was the break the addiction.
Yeah.
Her parents were the financial. And I kind of started laying that backwards. And my parents got divorced when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
My dad committed suicide 4 years ago. And we didn't really have a relationship, but there was some abuse around the house, more physical when, like, even probably before I was born, because I have 3 older brothers. but I was definitely like mentally abused from my dad, and he controlled us through fear, all of that. Right. And so that's where I was like, okay, this one's me. Like my mom broke the addiction for me. Now I get to break that abuse, financial, all of that, and be able to put that, down the line for him.
Of course.
So dude, I've really tried to live it since you've said it. And
that's right.
And it's, every time I've had a chance to be around you, whether you're speaking, dude, and I love it. I love how much you're speaking. Every time I've been to one of the events, I've had someone come up to me and be like, oh, this guy, and talking so positively about you. And there was the real estate investing school, the cash flow conference.
Yeah, it's cool to see there.
And I had a buddy that was like, just talking about you. Oh, I follow him on social media. I've seen this. And I'm like, do you want to meet him? And he's like, for real? And so and you were on your way out and I went up and grabbed you, dude. And it was like a cool experience for me because I was like, I've made this connection
so cool.
through some, the podcast hasn't been a walk in the park, right? It's been some dedication, some commitment, some financial.
Of course.
And because of that, I've able to become friends with you. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, dude. I've loved that you're so active in the community. There's so many people that reach out to you, and you
appreciate that.
I was telling my mom today, I said, Justin, and this isn't all just stroking your ego thing, right? But everyone talks about add value. And I think it's super, super cliche. And I'll be honest, like first time you told it to me, anything I can do to add value, man. I'm like, sure, sure, social media guy. And if there's one person in this world that lives up to that, I think it's you. And so really, dude, for the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that from you.
That's so kind.
It really touches me, and I appreciate all your dedication. And because, dude, like this is hometown for me. This is St. George hometown for me. And so to see someone in your stature move in and be able to do that, I want to take the time and recognize you.
One of the stories I tell in the book, you had my son Isaac on your podcast, which is really, really cool. So he and I are in Costa Rica with John Maxwell. John Maxwell wrote the foreword for my book. So John Maxwell, for those of you that don't know him, John Maxwell is the world's foremost authority on leadership. So he's written more leadership content than any human that's ever walked the earth. He's written 100 plus books, sold 35 million copies. He's a pretty amazing guy. So we go to Costa Rica, and we're part of this really intimate group. It's what's called a country transformation, where they teach developing countries leadership principles and leadership values. And the very first night before we start kind of on this, the time, we're having this private steak dinner out on this. You can imagine Costa Rica is like, we're like outside the restaurant. You can have the palm trees and like sun setting and the whole thing. And it's me, John Maxwell, and my son Isaac, in that order. And then there's some other really successful kind of people around they're like donors, and like there's like 10 of us. And so Isaac's 17 years old at this time. He's a kid. John's 74, to give you an idea. So they're sitting there talking, and I look over and I notice how truly engaged John was with Isaac and vice versa. I just thought, how cool is that? Here's this guy that could just blow this kid off. Isaac's not going to give any money to John Maxwell, or not going to support
monetary gain. Yeah.
But here he is, really like eye to eye having a conversation. So we go get in the elevator after, and my son looks at me with these totally sincere eyes, and he goes, "Dad, how can I add value to John Maxwell?" And I thought to myself, son, you can't. Just like, I just enjoy.
It's a great thought.
Just enjoy the trip, bro. Yeah. Like, you're 17, there's nothing you can do. But I knew he was so sincere in the question that I wanted to give it, some sincere thoughts. So we go back to our room, and I said, we threw a couple ideas out, and I go, what if you did this? What if you wrote him a note? Like the hotel staff has a little notebook that you get with a little pen. I go, man, pick that up. What if you wrote him a note, a handwritten note? That'd be cool, because most people don't write handwritten notes. And I could see him kind of like processing, like what to do. He wanted to add value in a sincere way, right? Anyway, the rest of the trip goes on. We go, really all over. Your just crazy trip. You're meeting like all these like highfalutin people of the country, and I'd see Isaac pull away, and I'd see him writing. He'd have his phone out like this, and he'd be writing. Long story short, the very final night, right before we wrap up, we're going in the room next to us. John's speaking to 6,000 people. We're kind of in the green room. And Isaac goes and delivers a handwritten 8x11 letter. So not just a note, but a full letter to John, right? It's like this really sweet moment. John's like reading it and like giving him a big hug. It was just a really sweet moment. But he didn't just write one to John. He wrote one to Mark Cole, the CEO of the Maxwell Organization. He wrote one to Jeff Stewart, who owns multiple Keller Williams brokerages out in North Carolina. He wrote 10 of these letters to the group. And the reason he had his phone out, because he was like making sure he had his spelling right and stuff, And John pulls us all aside, puts us in a circle right before he goes and speaks. And he says, thank you guys all for coming, whatever. And he goes, I have one last piece of advice. He said, be unforgettable. He said, be unforgettable to your clients, be unforgettable to your spouse, be unforgettable to your customers. Like, how can you be to your employees? Like, how can you be unforgettable in your life? So right now you ask yourself, how can I be unforgettable to my kids? Don't just say, hey kids, have a good day at school. Like, go give them a 10-second hug, look them in the eye and say, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. How could you be unforgettable to your spouse? How could you be unforgettable to the people you work with? So unforgettable. And he opens up his jacket and pulls out this letter. He says, Isaac, he says, you're unforgettable. And I thought to myself, here's the youngest kid in the room by far, the least to add to the room by far. And he's the most unforgettable of everybody.
Yeah.
And all of that happened with one simple question. How do I add value? And so for all of us, the way that we become unforgettable is by adding value at a high level, showing up and adding value, not being takers, but being givers, right? So check this out, just to end the story. 2 weeks later, Isaac gets a letter in the mail. And it's a letter, handwritten letter, and it's a Mont Blanc pen. It's a really kind of high, value pen, and it's got his initials engraved on it. And it's from Jeff Stewart, the owner of these multiple Keller Williams brokerage. He says, Isaac, he said, if my sons ever wrote a letter like you wrote to me, or wrote someone a letter like you wrote to me, he said, it'd be my proudest day as a father. He said, we've framed your letter and we put it in every one of the Keller, they framed it and put it in the Keller Williams, North Carolina offices. He says, because it reflects the leadership values that we are trying to espouse as Keller Williams. And he just said, I wanted to thank you. I just think to myself, all this from the 17-year-old kid to saying, how can I add value? So that's really, I think, the secret for all of us of how can you be unforgettable? You can learn to add value to other people.
Yeah. I love that. Isaac's a stud, dude. I've spoken in a couple high schools. You helped us fundraise a little bit for the DECA team over there in Crimson. And every time I go in there and talk you guys know Justin Prince, right? You guys know Isaac Prince, right? And so, dude, I love it. Again, it's like it adds value to me, even being able to talk about you guys.
That's cool. I love that.
I appreciate that. I've got a couple nuggets I kind of want to go through. First of all, what's your favorite lesson or what stood out to you the most in your book that you think people can gain from it? I don't want to give too much about what's in the book, right? Go read it, but
so many. Here's what I would share with you. I have a whole chapter on update your identity. So we talked earlier, success is an identity process. You'll never outperform the way you see yourself. A lot of us, our identity, we haven't updated since we were 9, since we were 14, when that thing happened or that person said something or we anchored in some of those emotions. We haven't done an update since then. Our iPhones don't work very well if we don't update them. At some point you got to update the software.
Yeah.
Same thing's true with us. You got to update the identity. So I tell people, you're not who you are who you were born to be. And you are not what you did, but you are what you repeatedly do.
Okay.
And a friend of mine I've worked with, his name's Jaime Molina, lives out in Southern California. Jaime's a strong man, but he's no kidding, one of the sweetest men I've ever met in my life. Just a gentle, sweet, calm man, The only person sweeter than Jaime is his wife, Ramona. They're super devout in their Catholic faith. Jaime runs a financial services business. He has 4 beautiful daughters. They're really strong in their marriage. He's just a really sweet guy. So he works with the troubled youth in his community. It's one of the ways he gives back to his community. And he tells the story about a man named E9400. So E9400 was born on the border town in Texas, El Paso, border of Mexico and the States. At age 8, he was introduced to alcohol. At age 9, he was sexually molested by someone 24 years older than him, became sexually active at age 9. At age 14, he was got onto really hard drugs. At age 15, he became a mule for the cartel. At age 24, he was convicted of 11 federal felonies and served multiple years in San Quentin prison. So you don't want to serve prison anywhere.
Sure.
If you're going to go serve prison, you don't want to go to San Quentin. It's one of the harshest, roughest prisons in all of America. The worst murderers, the worst rapists, the whole thing. So Jaime asked these kids, same thing I'd ask your listeners. What if we did an odds test, like a poll? What are the odds that E9400 is alive? Is he dead or alive? Is he in prison? Is he strung out on alcohol? Is he strung out on drugs? Is he living his best life? Like what would be the odds? I think all of us would be like, this is not going well. Someone that at age 8 is consistently in alcohol, molested at 9, sexually active at 9, 14's on drugs, 15's a mule for the cartels, multiple years in San Quentin. We're like, yikes.
Yeah.
So he says to the kids one day, he goes, I brought a special guest. And the kids are like, okay. And he goes, you guys remember I told you the story about E9400? And they're like, no way. So he goes, he's out in the hallway. I'm going to go grab him. Walks out in the hallway, shuts the door. He walks back in and the door shuts behind him, but E9400 is not there. So Jaime walks to the front of the room and he says, I am E9400.
Wow.
E9400 was his prison ID. That was his identity. For years of his life, he was E9400. I tell people, you're not who you are who you were born to be. Jaime wasn't born to be E9400. He was born to be Jaime Molina. This like devoted husband, this really incredible father, these beautiful girls, this devoted man in his faith, the man that runs a financial services business, the man that helps the kids in his community. That's who Jaime really is. And so I think for all of us, finding the habits of finding who you were born to be. And then here's the second part is you're not what you did. We all make mistakes, but you are what you repeatedly do. And so creating habits that actually help you to be the one you're born to be. So I'll give you an example. Most of us, our habits are like default setting habits. Like it's easier, the habit, for example, it's easier to sit on the couch, watch the game and eat Cheetos. That's an easier habit. It's a default habit versus like go for a run, and like drink a protein shake, right? That's a harder habit. You have to go against the laws of nature to like program that in. Most people have default setting habits that are destroying their future versus driving their future, where they cast out, here's who I was born to be, and then build habits that you rely on the habits because your habits don't care about your feelings. You do the right things, even though you don't feel like going to the gym, but you still do it. I don't feel like eating healthy, you still do it. Why do you do all those things? Because it's become a habit. Aristotle says excellence is not an act, it's a habit. Therefore, you are what you repeatedly do. And so the book for me, this idea of updating your identity, who are you? You're the one, and then giving tactical, practical ways to go be the one today through the right habits, creating the right software and habits in your life to where it's inevitable that you grow into the person you're born to be.
I want to talk about the C's. Can we move through the C's real quick? I love this thought that you've put together on this. And then I want to ask, in your opinion, what the most important C is.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of, let you roll.
I call it the 3C success loop. And it's almost like you can create, they feed each other and then all of a sudden they start to spin. And when they start to spin, your life can take off in a really dramatic way, in a really positive way, right? So the first C is confidence. And the foundation of your success is believing in yourself. Do you believe in you? Like, would you invest in you? You've heard the idea of like, you don't invest in the horse, you invest in the jockey. Like, would you invest in the people versus the business? Would you invest in you? Like, do you believe in you? And for a lot of us, we don't even believe in ourselves, but yet we want everyone else to believe in us. Like, do you believe in you? I remember my son brought up one time, my wife was cleaning out our cold storage. He brought this plastic bin. It had all my old personal development books. It was the craziest experience. This is about 7 years ago. It was 11 years prior that I was reading all these books that I had been reading when I was loft at my wife's parents' garage, just the grind stage, right? These books, I had journals, I had all these old CD series that I used to listen to. It was kind of surreal because I remember hearing them, And one of them was from an event that I attended. There were 6,000 people at the event. I had 2 people on my team there. I remember sitting in the very back of the room. I wasn't on stage. I was just in the very back in the dark corners, wondering what I was even doing there, And I didn't stay at that hotel where they did the event. I stayed 7 or 8 miles down the street in the hotel that you don't dare take your socks off, the grimy hair hotel. And I'm sitting in this event, and I saw my notebook from that event. It was a branded notebook because the event had a theme to it. So I'm like reading my notes, and it was surreal because I was remembering those emotions that I was feeling as I wrote those words. Turned to the last page. This is about 75% through the notebook. I was taking a lot of notes, because I was hungry to learn, hungry to change and grow. The last page at the very bottom in all caps, it says, I believe in myself. And I just got like emotional. I was like, man, I wrote that when I didn't have a lot of reasons to believe in me, And I was like, man, that became the foundation of my success was just believing that I could figure it out or believing that I could keep trying, right?
So, sorry, let me cut you off for a second.
Please.
So is that like a exercise that you could have people do? Because that's what I was going to say. So what if you don't believe in yourself?
Okay, so check this out. I typically teach what I'm going to share with you at the end. So check this out. No, that's important. What do you do right now if you're hearing this and you're like, that makes a lot of sense, the importance of confidence. But what do I do if right now I don't believe in myself? How do I even get into the success loop if I'm not even in the loop, which is confidence? It's another C word, but it's courage. So you have courage. Courage is you start the podcast even though you're not sure you got a lot to say. Courage is you do the video even though you think you're crappy at video. Courage is you put yourself out there with the business even though you're not sure you have all the business acumen or skill. Courage is you say, I'm sorry to your spouse when you're still hurt yourself. Courage is you take action when you're completely imperfect at it. That courage, and our country needs more people of courage. One of the stories I teach in the book is there's a Christian author named Mark Batterson that wrote a book called Chase the Lion. And he says that he tells a story about a guy named Benaniah. It's an old Bible story. It's kind of an obscure story in the Old Testament. It says that Benaniah chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day. Okay, question number one. How many people do you know that chase lions into pits on snowy days?
Yeah, 0.
Not very many. What does that mean? It means that he was rare. Anything that's rare is more valuable. So if you have a diamond that's rare, it's more valuable. A baseball card that's rare is more valuable. A painting that's rare is more valuable. A friendship that's rare is more valuable. If you have someone that has courage, they're rare. And anything that's rare is more valuable. So the lion, the chase the lion that he's talking about is your dreams. It's your goal. It's like you're chasing being the one. That's the lion. So what happens for most people is they hear the roar, they feel the roar in their heart, like, God, I got what it takes, And guess what? They either ignore the roar or they run from the roar. A person that has courage runs to the roar. It leans into their courage. They take perfect action. The courage will precede the confidence. If you're willing to just lean into your courage, have courage, chase the lion into pits on snowy days, then all of a sudden you start to build a baseline of confidence, because confidence is number one, making and keeping commitments you make to yourself, and then making and keeping commitments you build to others starts to become the foundation of confidence. The confidence will lead you to commitment. Where there is no confidence, there is no commitment. Because think of it this way. If you had no confidence that something was going to work, how much commitment are you going to put towards it?
Not a lot.
You have no confidence this business is going to work. 0 confidence. Well, it's hard to be fully committed if you have 0 confidence, right? Where there is no confidence, there is no commitment. The confidence leads to like, you know what? I'm going to get in, stay in, get committed, stay committed. Most people, they're like super in, super out, super in, super out, super in, super out. It's like they listen to a podcast, they're like, let's go, I got this. And then like someone quits tomorrow on their team. They're like, they're in, then now they're out with that person. Or, things are going well, have a good year in business. They're like, I got this. And then they have a sucky year and they're like, screw this, so it's just super in, super out. In math, the fastest way to get from A to B in math is a straight line, right? So it's what I call straight line commitment. Straight line commitment means we shorten the like roller coaster. It's just like, I'm in, dude. It's like in a marriage. It's like, God, we're going through a rough time, but we're just committed. You know what I'm saying? We're just, because commitment's attractive. So you just shorten it. Like, I don't go so high, I don't go so low. I'm just in. The commitment leads to competence. That's the third C. Competence is your skill set. So imagine your talent's your floor, your skill's your ceiling. So you want to build skill above the talent. And what I tell people is the better you get at what you do. So for example, you have, multiple businesses. You have your podcast. You just can continue to improve the skill sets, the competency. Like you become better at it. You become better at it. Better interviewer, better notes, better systems, better processes, better with your employees, better communication, just all of it. You just become better. The more competent you become, the more confidence you have, because competency leads to confidence. The more confidence you have, the more committed you get. The more committed you get, the more confidence you build. You start to spin the loop of just like, you get to a point where you're just like, you start a new project, you're like, I'm going to go crush this, because you just know how to get in the loop.
I know I
make
can
things
do
happen.
It.
Exactly.
Figure it out.
So again, if you're not there today, what do? Lean in today to your courage. Take action, even though it's imperfect.
Keep commitments to yourself. I love that you said that. I think that I've taught, so I mentioned it, I've done a little bit of high school speaking, and that's one thing I've told them is like, get used to failure. Failure is not a negative. Failure is going to gain that confidence. Like no one's born confident. You have to learn how to be confident. And I believe that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
A couple more things I want to touch on. We got about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure we get as much in here as we can. E plus R equals O.
Yeah,
Can you blow that up for me? We talked about it a little bit last time, but I love the idea behind it.
No, so we were talking pre-recording about the struggle section of the story so much, and there's dream, struggle, victory, right? They're all equal. So you've got big dreams. You signed yourself up for a struggle equal to the size of the dream and a victory equal to the size of the struggle. What we all want in life is like big dreams, super small struggle, big, huge victory. That's what we wish it was, you know? Or when we're in the struggle section, we're like, curse God, like, what's the deal here? It's like, no, dude, this is all part of the plan. Like now, if you want a small struggle, that's okay too. You just have a small dream, small victory. It's all good. You just got to choose, right? So when we're in the struggle, we were talking earlier, it's like, this is the bigger the struggle, the bigger the story. The bigger the struggle, the louder the applause. It's like the bigger the struggle, the more inspiring it is when you overcome the struggle and get to the victory. So that's a way to think about the E plus R equals O. So E plus R equals O is this. It's event plus response equals outcome. So event plus response equals outcome. First lesson, the E doesn't equal the O. So in other words, it's not the events of our life. We're not victims of the events of our life, even if we were actually a victim or even of the outcome, because we get to own the R. We get to own the response. We're victors of the response. So Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He and his family were hauled off into Auschwitz. And he ultimately survived. And he wrote this, by the way, the most just horrific human experience that you could possibly go through. And he says, no matter what they stripped from me, no matter what they did to me, no matter what they took from me, what they couldn't take was what he called the gap. He said, I own the gap. The gap was his response. So this is the event. This is the outcome. He was a victor of the response. Second lesson is that the R is not react. The R is respond. It's because leaders don't react, leaders respond. Leaders show up with intention. One of the chapters in my book was a John Maxwell chapter, a lesson I learned from John, one of the most impactful lessons I've ever learned. We don't have time to share the whole story. It's in the book, but basically it's to live an intentional life. When you live an intentional, I think of those words, like most people live a life of reaction to distraction versus a life of intentional creation. Like, what life am I intentionally creating? How am I showing up and reacting or responding to life versus just reacting to it all, right?
Do you think it's default to react?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's the undisciplined default reaction.
Right. Stuff happens and bam. So check this out, just the science of it. Check this out. Your body works with electrical currents. Have you ever had this happen where, I'll give you an example. Something happens at work, something happens with the kids, something happens on the road, right? And you literally just, you kind of basically snap, right? You get super hot, super fast, whatever it is. And then later you're like, what the heck was my problem? Like, that wasn't even how sorry kids, I was having a bad, you're like, what the heck was that all about? You almost wonder to yourself, like, dude, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Right? What happens is when the reaction hits, the event hits, what happens is you have electrical currents that go all the way up your spine. They go into every cell of your body, go all the way up your spine to the back of your spine, into the bottom of your brain, into the frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is all your logical part of your brain. Have you ever had, so this is what I tell people, is just press pause and take a breath. Like literally something happens and then you show up. You say, I'm going to set some intention, because this leads to my third point, which is your R creates an E for others. Your response creates an event for other people. The way that you choose to show up and respond when you get cut off will create an event for somebody else. The way you choose to show up for your kids when you get, something happens, an event happens, and that will create an event for the kids. It will create an event for your spouse. It will create an event for your employees. It will create an event for your customer. So you say to yourself, how am I going to show up in this? Bruce Lee said it this way. This is perfect. He said, you want to have a mind like water. And he said, so imagine in your mind a still pond, right? Up in the mountains, just crystal clear still. If you took a rock and you throw it into the pond, he says, how does the water respond to the rock? He says, totally appropriately for the size and the velocity of the rock.
Got you.
In other words, it doesn't overreact or underreact. It responds totally perfectly. That's how you want to, and you're saying, how do I respond in this moment? How do I show up for my kids in a way that creates a positive event for them? How do I show up in my life with my spouse that creates a positive response for her? In our case, right? How do I show up in my business that creates a positive response for this customer who's acting a fool, to where I create a positive event in their life? And so you choose that. You live an intentional life. You own the R. You own your response to your life.
How do you know, I guess, for just the everyday person, how would you know what issues in your life you need to work on? Like, is there a tell in life, do you think? Is it I kind of bring that up because so to kind of backstory me, like talking about Bruce Lee, my dad, it didn't matter what size the rock was. It was the biggest splash and the biggest ripple, right? I had a friend's dad teach me that. I started observing him I'm a people watcher. So I observe people. I have hard times in like busy restaurants because I'm hearing like 4 conversations. And I'm a predictor. I'm all of that. But when I had a friend's dad, I would watch him and I would see how he would deal with really anything, positive or negative, really. And it was always the same thing. It was take a pause, take a breath. But if his level and voice went louder, it was bad.
Yeah.
And it typically did.
Yeah.
My buddy's dad, his voice always stayed the same, but if it did go louder, it was almost like he was razzing you to teach you a lesson. And so it was a thing for me. I really observed him to like take a second, think about it, put a thought process through, and then, deal with the issue, whatever it was. And luckily I learned that, I think, when I was older, because I could recognize it. But yeah, dude, that's why I wanted to touch that, because the reaction versus response. I think for me, that was at least the key.
Yeah.
The key to the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if people have an issue in their life, how do you know that's the issue to work on? Is there any thoughts behind that?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think, one of the exercises I do in the book is I do a full blown kind of, dream building. It's a dream building goal setting workshop in the book. I've done it all over the country with audiences, and it's a really powerful workshop. In fact, I had a gal that went through it recently. She's like, I stopped. She's like, I wanted to keep going in the book, but you told me to stop in the book and actually do the work, and it starts to craft. So you start creating your life versus reacting to your life. And so you start to create, what am I looking to accomplish? And so once you have some clarity and some vision for your life, then you start to say, okay, who do I need to be that person?
Got you.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, if I want to lose 10 pounds, who do I need to be 10 pounds less? How do I need to think about food? What foods do I need to put in my body? How do I need to move my body? What is someone 10 pounds less than me doing that I'm not doing? Maybe they go for X amount of walk steps a day. Maybe they eat X amount of calories a day. If I be the one today, meaning if I act as that person today, what will happen eventually? Well, eventually you'll walk right into 10 pounds less. Why? Because you're literally doing the things that someone 10 pounds less than you does. You're being that one today. Does that make sense?
No, totally.
So that's the thing, is like, you identify, what am I looking to accomplish? And then start being that person. And you literally step into it. It's not disingenuous at all. That's literally how you step into the next version of yourself.
Yeah, it goes back to like being super intentional, and then also being hyper focused in that one thing is. Mm-hmm. So I like that. Once you narrow down that one thing, what needs to change to become that one thing?
Yes.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Dude, we're hitting time. I wish I had all day to sit here with you, dude.
Brother. Love it.
Seriously, I appreciate you coming. Guys, go out and get the book. By the time this airs, it'll be available everywhere. You're doing an audiobook?
Yeah. Go to Audible, Spotify.
Will that be released too?
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you can go wherever you buy your favorite books. So whether that's at the bookstore, whether that's on Amazon, Borders, whether it's on Audible or Spotify, wherever you get your books, you can go get the book, Be the One. And, every book matters from the author perspective. Like, that matters, like all the bestseller stuff, that stuff matters. Let me say this. You say, well, I don't really care if you're a bestseller. That's fine. But what I'd say this, there's an old adage that says, evil prevails when good men and women do nothing. It's like it's like, if we don't vote with our dollars on content that we're like, I want my kids to hear this. I want my sales team to hear this. I want the kids at my church to hear this. I want my mom to hear this. We vote with our dollars. And so if we don't, then guess what our kids' options are? It's a bunch of crap, know? So we get a vote with our dollars and say, I'm going to go support messages that resonate with me. I'm going to go support messages that I need my 15-year-old to hear. I need all my entire sales team to realize who they really are and then know how to be that one today. So the book, I think, will have a movement behind it that will help a lot of people all over the world. Well,
and I think whether your kid's, terrible, I guess, whether your kid's a craphead or your kid's Isaac, I think they can both grow from this. So that's what I love about it. The first thing I wrote down, this book is for everyone.
Yeah.
And so dude, I love it. I I'm definitely reading it, and I'm not a book reader, but I'm definitely going to read this.
I think you're going to love it, dude. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time and doing it, and writing the book. I mean, I know that's a struggle. It takes time, takes commitment, and time's not a huge thing that you probably have free of. So anyway, guys, that's episode 115. Thanks for sticking with us. Please like, go share, buy the book. If you don't follow Justin, get on social media, follow Justin Prince. Is it just Justin Prince on everything?
Justin Prince, or I am Justin Prince.
I am Justin Prince.
Instagram, for example.
And we'll tag the website. We'll tag all that stuff on here to reach out to Justin any way you want. I've done everything I can to be around him as much as I can. And it's like I said, it's cool because there's a lot of options to do that in Southern Utah right now. So appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you guys next week. Boom.
Good man.
Is that all right?
Yep, sick.